My name is Dory Olivos. I'm the Adult Services Manager at Rocky River Public Library. And the library and the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland are glad to welcome Chris Glassburn here tonight to talk about drawing new maps for the state of Ohio. Chris is I'm sure most of you are familiar, he's a redistricting expert, and he served as a map maker for the Ohio Democrats for the 2010 census. He's also owns his own owner and president of the government affairs and campaigns firm Project Govern, and he's also my city councilman in North Olmsted. So welcome, Chris, if you would like to get started and share your screen.
Sure, thank you. Hopefully everyone can see the Dave's Redistricting homepage. As Dory said, my name's Chris Glassburn. I've been drawing maps for redistricting since 2007 was my first crack at this. This website in particular came together because myself and some programmers at Microsoft wanted to try to democratize and bring this process out into the light now almost 15 years ago. And we now have it as the product that you see today. As Dory mentioned, I am a Democrat, but these tools can be useful to anybody, regardless of party, to help draw maps and understand maps for their community, their state, their county. So we'll get started. If you have any particular interest, whether they be congressional, state legislative, or local, please feel free to ask questions and poke me in one direction or another. This tool can fulfill any of those levels, at least for the purposes of getting you close enough that you can submit something to a governmental entity that's close enough that they'll have to take you seriously, which is the goal. So we're all from Ohio, I presume. So I'll start with Ohio. The way you get to this is davesredistricting.org. The first programmer to start this is a gentleman named Dave Bradley, Microsoft programmer again. And we'll start with Ohio. If you have not signed up for the site, that's fine. But when you click on Ohio, you'll see that already you can see what other people have done and what our existing districts are for Congress and for the state assembly. At the top are our existing districts. You can see there's a lot of squiggles, for lack of a better term. When you scroll down, you can see by objective criteria what maps currently are the highest scoring. And I'll get more into what that is, but the reason I show you this, besides to show you the utility of the website, is to start off with the point of we all want, or most of us want, fair maps or good maps, but what is good and what is fair can have different meanings. And so part of the point of showing the 5 highest scoring maps are that these not are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's to show you that maps, when you single in on a certain criteria, can look very different depending on what your definition is. So for example, the first one here, most proportional, is in terms of having the same amount of Democrats and Republicans as those who have voted in the past decade. This second map is most competitive to make each district 50-50 or as close to 50-50 as possible. And you can see there's quite a bit of gerrymandering that has to occur to achieve that. Third here, best minority representation. The idea being that this one was to see what is the absolute highest number of minority districts you could create. As you see, there's a lot of squiggles and lines connecting communities in very far corners of the state from each other. But even most compact, you see a little bit of a difference. Least splitting, you see another little bit of a difference. So let's start, because I think it's amongst the easier ways to do this. We'll start with Congress. And if you sign up for the site, you can it's just giving it your email and creating a username. You get a screen like this, and you can create a map that you would like. If you don't, you can just click on any of these maps, and you can explore those maps. It takes a moment to upload, but we'll look at our current congressional districts for a moment. And let me pause here real briefly. When I started in 2007 with mapping, we had just barely gotten to the computer stage of drawing maps, meaning we're deliberately drawing district maps on computers. In the 2001 cycle, and this happens every 10 years, they were still drawing predominantly by hand. In 2011, we had computers, and you saw quite a bit of difference and much more significant gerrymanders as a result of that. Sorry, I'm trying to make this easier to see. But this time, what myself and others are trying to do is make it so that the public also can participate. So 10 years ago, the computer, the quote unquote laptop that I used to do this weighed 12 pounds. We've moved a long way to be able to have this on anybody's browser. You can even do this on a Chromebook. It's a little slow, but you can do it on a Chromebook. So what are we looking at here? We're currently looking at the existing Ohio congressional map. So there's a ton of stuff on your screen. It's meant to give you the same tools, again, as what folks like myself use on much more robust programs, but it's everything you need on a basic level to draw. So I'm going to start on the left-hand side of the screen and work my way around a little bit. These are the districts, 1 through 16 as we currently have. We're going to go down to 15 with this census. And you can see, using the numbers right now from the 2019 census estimate, where districts sit in terms of their population variance. So District 3, which is the Columbus area, is 60,000 people over right now, estimated, whereas some districts, such as the Appalachian district, is negative 30,000. So that district's going to need to grow. The Columbus area needs to shrink in geography so that the population's balanced out, in addition to the fact that we have to eliminate a district. In these districts, again, right now, you're starting with the 2019 census estimates. You will have the 2020 census within about 4 days of the data being released, which is supposed to be released this Thursday. So myself and the other programmers are trying to make it so that we get it to everyone to be able to use by Tuesday. So we have the population of each district. You can change on here whether you want to look at the district by colors, by their partisan lean, blue being more Democratic, red being more Republican. You can do that on a precinct level. You don't have to just do it district-wide. And you can see Ohio's metro areas are much more Democratic, and rural areas are much more Republican. The most Republican, at least over the past decade, voters in the state, by the way, just as a fun fact, are the Amish here in Holmes County. You can also do demographics by African American, all minorities. You take your pick. So for example, this is African American in the greater Cleveland area. You'll see Hispanic here in just a moment. There's some density in what is the West 25th area of the city of Cleveland and in Lorain County. But we'll keep going. And then you can also, if you want to make it easier on yourself, if you're not familiar with places, change the geographical boundaries that show on your screen. So again, background maps. I find city lines to be very useful in counties like Cuyahoga County. that are predominantly cities. In places like Franklin County, where Columbus is, it's more useful sometimes to have precincts. So those are just some of the broad areas that you can have showing up on your map, different things. So I know that's a lot to be thrown at you, but let's start with this a little more simply. And I'm going to exit out of this map, and we'll start a new map. So let's say, for sake of argument, make this very simple. You wanted to draw a city council map in the city of Euclid. And I'll come back to Mr. Barron's question in a few moments. So we'll name this plan Euclid. Select the state of Ohio. Now, shapes. All the data from the last time maps were drawn from 2010 is on this site. But you can use precincts as we have them today, and the default is to use them as we have today. Under plan type, you can pick, again, Congress, state Senate, state House, other, or community. Other is what I would pick if you wanted to do a city council plan. Say you wanted to draw the Cleveland City Council districts again. I would do other. The purpose of community is if you want to, and this is more for a different group, identify communities of interest, which is a specific concept in redistricting, to say like these counties along the Ohio River should be together, for example, because they're what you think is Appalachia, for example. That's what community is for. But other is for counties or cities in this case. And we'll restrict to, you can pick the geography, and we'll pick Euclid. I can get to all the cities of Ohio. There we go. And Euclid has 7 city council wards. It will automatically figure out the magic number for you for whatever community. Some communities, say for example Beechwood, actually doesn't do their city council districts by wards at all. They're all at large. But once you've made all those picks as to what you want to do, now are the fun things in terms of what do you want your data to be? And data matters quite a bit. We already picked the 2020 precincts. The default option for census is latest total population. So right now, that means it's the census estimate from 2019. If you leave that option there, when we finish the 2020 census, it will automatically upgrade your map to the 2020 numbers and have that in there. But you can do the 2019 estimates, the 2018 estimates, the 2010 numbers, and you can change this later. But let's just go with latest total population for now. Same thing with voting age. There's a lot of talk about what's a minority district or how is this district going to go that way? Well, you draw congressional districts or city council districts all by the total number of people. But when you're doing a kind of analysis on whether a district, say, will vote for a minority candidate, you make that evaluation based on the voting age population, or that is anyone that is 18 and older. So again, we'll leave that just on latest voting age, and then election. So we have pre-populated a number of different races that had very different outcomes, especially, for example, senator and in 2016 and 2018 were very different in Ohio. But a good starting point, and we have president for 2012 down here as well. A good starting point is the composite, which is the default, which is all of those statewide elections that were listed 2016 to 2020. For those of you who are going to be looking to submit maps for the congressional process for the state of Ohio or for the General Assembly processes, we are going to be adding in 2014 and 12 as soon as the state of Ohio releases its official data for those, which we expect to be within the next week as well. So there should be elections for the entire decade. Then lastly, when you're drawing a map, if you would like, you can hide election data altogether. I find that it's more useful to have more information, but it's an option there for you if that is what you want. All right, so we click apply. And here we have, this is the city of Euclid. So again, what are we looking at here? Well, it's a little easier. Most of us, I think, are familiar, even though many of us are West Siders, with the concept of Euclid. But let me put this background map to point out a few key features, because Euclid's a pretty unique city in some regards. One is that Euclid, like my home city of North Olmsted, has a highway that runs right through the middle of it. This is called Lakeland Boulevard there, but I-90 and Route 2 go through the city of Euclid. Loosely speaking, Euclid has a very divided population because of this. You tend to have many more minorities and many poorer residents on the southern side of the highway. And then on the north end, both because it's on the opposite side of the highway, but also because of proximity to the lake, you have tend to have much wealthier and more Caucasian folks. In 2008, there actually was a lawsuit about the city of Euclid, and they were ordered to draw districts for their school board, which is very unusual in Ohio. School boards elected at large in every other community in the state. But the reason they did that was because there was a minority of African Americans in the southern end who were consistently getting, despite there being 3 or 2 spots open, consistently not winning elections because the northern half of the city, which at that time was predominantly white, was outvoting them. Even though, again, there in some elections were 3 spots or 2 spots, they couldn't get 1 spot. So Euclid's a fun topic for map drawers. So what are we looking at here? So right now, as a default, we are looking at Euclid with its current precincts. These squiggly lines inside of each of them is census blocks as a smaller unit of drawing. So it might surprise you to see that Euclid has rapidly changed over the past decade. It was just under, I believe, 50% African American 10 years ago, and now it is almost 64%. You can see this, I just picked the whole city, in 2 different places. One is on the left-hand side of the screen is the existing district you have. So for example, I clicked on the entirety of the city of Euclid, so you have the entirety of the numbers. On the right-hand side of the screen, which you can't leave the cursor over Euclid, but you're just gonna have to look over to the right side of your screen with me, has the numbers for the area that you're highlighting right now. So again, it shows that the total population is 64% African American, but I'll point out that the voting age population is only 59%. This is not atypical, for African American communities throughout Ohio. In general, African Americans are younger than as a group than Caucasians, and so you will see a lower voting number. In any kind of racial, again, analysis of districts, the number they are looking for is the voting age population, not the total population. And so that's something that gets a little bit tricky for some folks. And then lastly, at the bottom, you can see overall, the city is just under 80% Democratic and just under 20% Republican in terms of its votes over the past 6 years. So why did I pick Euclid besides the fun history of 2008? Because this is a city that can show you very much about the impact of gerrymandering, and it's a nice little microcosm. So this city, as I've mentioned, is just under 64% Black and just under 60% by voting age. There is some density in the southern area in terms of African American, but with those numbers, which are not that in some ways different from statewide of Ohio. Ohio's 56% or 55%, I should say, Republican and 46% or 45% Democratic over the past 10 years. just having that much of a difference in terms of one group being larger than the other, you can really maximize or really minimize the impact. So let's clear the city. Up here are your basic drawing tools. You can select a whole county, a precinct, a city, or a block. The size being county, then city, precinct smaller, precincts about 1,000 people, and then block. And eraser tool here will erase the whole city. Okay. So we created ourselves 7 districts here. And so the first thing we'll do is just draw a couple of precincts and show just a couple here right off the bat on the lake shore. Okay, that's just about right in there in terms of we got 6,888 people. That's 148 off. The goal for everything but Congress is you want to have no more than 5% above and below what the amount is. So 148 is going to be within that number. Let me draw just another district here for it's short, for sake of argument. And I'm just clicking, that one's large, it's too large. And this one I'll make short. Okay, so we've got 3 wards drawn just rapidly here, no rhyme or reason to it. As you're drawing, you can go to the upper right hand of the screen here and click statistics. And this will show much more in-depth information about what you have in terms of your districts. So far, the first district is 2% off with its population, but that second one that I mentioned that had over 1,000 people too many is 16%. And that's why it's getting highlighted here as that's problematic. The total range here cannot be more than 10% in terms of, again, -5 to +5 or -4 to +6. Also, you can find here as you go across the partisanship of the districts you're drawing and the racial makeup for voting age population. For congressional and state legislature, the more in-depth tools for analysis are here one step further, which is analyze. So analyze is where those scores came from the beginning in terms of what is the tells you tells you evaluations on different criteria that are used by data scientists. So first off, we obviously haven't completed the map. Contiguous is one of the things that has to be, all districts have to be connected within themselves. I'm not drawing any holes yet, but I haven't finished the map. And equal population I haven't done yet. But there is a ton of data that you can look at about how round are your districts, how competitive are they versus the partisanship, how many of your districts are in which category versus what's possible. So let's go back to the map. To answer Heather's question, at the moment, I'm just drawing a municipal just to show the dynamics of how to select different precincts and whatnot for map drawing on a real simple level so that folks aren't quite overwhelmed. But then I'll blow out to larger districts here in a few minutes and get to Michael's question about Senate District 24. So let's finish here just real quick on precincts. These still have, even with precincts, painting, still have some rough edges to them. And so that begs the question, why? Well, what you're drawing with now are precincts that were created by map drawers in effect 10 years ago. You are not necessarily bound by that. The building block that you have to use for map drawing isn't necessarily precincts or even whole communities, although that's strongly required and encouraged in the state legislative process and the congressional process. The building block that you have to use as your lowest, smallest piece are census blocks, which is groups of the census that was the lowest geographic unit from the census. So, all right, I clicked on block. I just drew this very ugly map. How do I get to those blocks? How do I take, say, for example, this blue district and try to clean up these squiggles that seemingly don't have a good reason? So on any given precinct, if you double click on them, you'll see that these new additional squares came up that are part of this precinct. Those are the census blocks. Those are the smallest units you can use. So, for example, I will take a few of those blocks here to make a slightly different border that uses just Lakeshore Boulevard on the southern side here. That's now part of the purple district. And I will break up this precinct to make again, more squared off version of the purple here to go up east to 22nd, which if you've been to Euclid, that is a very significant street. So those are the basics of just some of the selection tools. But as I go along, you can see that the population numbers change each of the way. What's unique about the city of Euclid, and then click OK here. And so now I've got a nice cleaner edge here, which again, for the city of Euclid, whether you're north of Lakeshore Boulevard or south of Lakeshore Boulevard is a pretty big difference. And whether you're on one side of East 22nd or not is again, somewhat of a big difference in that it's a very major road, much more than probably any other north-south road except for Babbitt and 260th. So let me just stop there for a brief moment. I know I've been talking pretty fast here. And are there any questions in the chat about just the mechanics of using this kind of point and click drawing software? Not seeing so far, but I will wait a little bit longer. And again, you can erase or keep any of this, but let's start a new congressional map since I'm not seeing. Actually, let's start a new state legislative map since my class about Senate District 24. So to start with the Senate. Remove the precinct line so that the files will load quicker. Okay, so what we're now looking at is a map of our Ohio State Senate districts. There was a question earlier from Michael about District 24, which is this purple district that surrounds the outer edge of Cuyahoga County, as to is this an illegal district now under the new rules. So very much oversimplify the rules, and the Senate and the Congress and the House have significant differences. The House districts three districts have to nest inside of a Senate district now, which is a big, a big change. Let's try to start answering Michael's question. Can you recreate this monstrosity? So my first, I shouldn't call it a monstrosity, this very gerrymandered district. So there's a couple ways to answer that question. So first off is, what is the population of District 24 today? The 2019 census estimate is that it's short about 1,000 people. So in and of itself, for population reasons, it would not necessarily be forbidden this time. Does it have whole communities, which is another requirement? Yes, it does have whole communities. So again, there's not an inherent reason that it has to not exist. However, The complexities of the state districts are that you have to use whole communities. And so while District 24 may be made of whole communities, we can see very clearly that Senate District 23, which is this light blue one, Senate District 21, which is this brown one, and Senate District 25, which is this pink one, all have different pieces of the city of Cleveland and splitting up that city, which is no longer allowed. The long answer, which I'll show a little bit of, is that no, Michael, this Senate District 24 can't exist anymore, because in order to fix the other 3 districts, you will make it so that you can't draw a district that's this long and swirly around the edges of Cuyahoga County. So, but let's go back to Congress. Create a new map. Question that popped up. To Ohio. So I will answer that VRA question in just a moment as we get Congress rolling here. Okay, so we now have 15 districts, and we will get squared away. All right, take precinct lines off, put city lines and county lines. Here we go, background map. And this will be a lot easier to draw with. But I'll take the city lines off for just one moment here. Okay, so on Congress, this might be another good one to start doing examples with. What are the rules? Well, again, we're going from 16 to 15 districts. The magic number in 2010 was about 710,000. And as you can see for the 2019 estimate, it looks like the magic number is going to be about 780,000. So those districts I was talking about earlier, that, you know, that Appalachian district is short 30,000 people, isn't just short 30,000. It's short 30,000 when there were 16 districts. It's now going to be short an additional 60,000 for a total of 90. Actually, no, 100, because it goes 710 to 780. It's going to be short 100,000 people. So all of these districts will have to gain additional population. So when you see in the media these discussions of, well, which district will disappear, it's not that simple. The answer is that almost all of the districts have to grow in some form or fashion or another. And so a net loss of one of them is the change. Over the course of the past decade, Franklin County and Delaware County here in Central Ohio, the Columbus area, as well as Licking and Fairfield, have grown a significant amount, almost half of a congressional seat worth above where they were 10 years ago. There's been some more suburban growth between Dayton and Cincinnati, but the net impact of all of the population changes in Ohio and the loss of a district is that functionally Columbus, or the Columbus area, greater Columbus area, will gain a seat, and the rest of the state will have 2 less seats in total covering it. So how do we go about this? What are the rules? So the first rule in all of this is that if you can draw a district inside of a county, you have to, functionally speaking. So let's do the largest counties and see which ones are larger in a congressional district and by how much or how little. Again, these are 2019 census estimates. This will automatically be updated with the census once those numbers are released and we have finished them, the programmers and I. Okay, so I just highlighted the 6 largest counties. And again, that was a pretty quick click for the whole thing. For the 2019 estimate, Cuyahoga County, the first one, and I can show just that district if we want. is Cuyahoga County is, come on. I've got too many things open here. My apologies. There we go. Cuyahoga County is 470,000 people over. So we know that that county has to have a congressional district in it. Franklin, which is now overtaking Cuyahoga as the largest county in the state by population, also has to. Hamilton, which is this third one, it looks pretty likely that they're going to have a district entirely within their county. So, but 36,000, it's possible the census could be off by that much, but pretty unlikely. But then our next three largest, which were the Akron area, which is Summit, Montgomery County, which is Dayton, and Lucas County, which is Toledo. Those three are not large enough to have a congressional district just inside of them. They're very big pieces, but not big enough. So the first thing we know is we have to draw a district in each of these counties. Now, part of approaching a map, and Congress is a little easier in that you're just using with 15 as opposed to 99 with the State House and 33 with the Senate, is determining what you must do and then figuring out what's possible from there. So let's start with the easiest, which is Hamilton. I say easiest because there's only 36,000 people. So we'll zoom in on Cincinnati, Hamilton here. And let me bring back my my partisanship and my cities and precincts. Okay, so Hamilton County here, you can see, has some pretty stark differences in communities. With say Springdale up here in the north central area versus Harrison Township on the far west end here. Very big differences between partisanship. So those out of those 35,000, 36,500 to be specific, that are too many, which 36,000 people those are could potentially impact how Democratic or how Republican this district would be. So let's take that off and put our map bars back. All right, so let's delete Cincinnati here just for one moment. Okay, so what do the rules say? In the past, part of how gerrymanders have had success in Ohio is that they have divided large cities amongst numerous districts or brought large cities from different areas together to try to create a urban district that really isn't urban, but is connecting multiple communities, say like connecting Cincinnati to Springfield or connecting the city of Lorain to Mansfield. Lorain and Mansfield are both Democratic areas, but they're not particularly close together geographically. One of the primary rules now is that the largest city, if it's over 100,000 in a county, has to be in one seat. So in this case, Cincinnati is, I'm highlighting it here, and you can see on the far right of your screen, there's a total of 300,000 people in Cincinnati. That city meets the qualification, so it's going to have to be in a seat by itself. Okay, so we know that has to be, that's bigger than 35,000. That has to be in the Hamilton County seat. All right, we see that there are some communities, like in Cuyahoga County, Lindale is contained in the city of Cleveland and Brooklyn. There are actually some cities here. St. Bernard is one, Elmwood Place is another, Norwood is another, that are entirely inside of the city of Cincinnati. So those have to go along with it. In Cleveland, Bracknell is entirely within the city of Cleveland. So its fate will go with the city of Cleveland. So even with picking those communities here, that's only about a little under half of the population we need for a congressional district. So I'm going to go back out here for a moment take these precincts off because it's a little easier to see with cities. We'll go, for example, we'll exclude the most Democratic areas on the edge of the county and then exclude the most Republican areas. And again, just give you a flavor of what choices you make can make a very big difference in terms of electoral results. So Hamilton County as a whole, 2016 to 2020 voted 53, and you can see this in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, the composite 2016 to 2020, excuse me, voted 53.8% Democratic, 44.8% Republican, and 1.5% other. The number of population we need for a congressional district, again, is going to be somewhere close to 780,000, and to answer Heather's question. So Hamilton County at 813 is going to be, again, somewhere in the ballpark of 30 to 40,000, maybe 25 to 45,000 above the population threshold. So 10% or not 10%, let me take that. So that 36,000 people, if I was going to exclude, let's start with the most Republican areas, which is Harrison, as I mentioned. I've clicked on the city of Harrison. There's only 11,000 people. That's a good number for my 36,000 population balance here. It is 76% Republican and only 22% Democratic. So that certainly should make a little bit of a difference as I remove 35,000 people from this district. Now, when you have that city cursor, it will not select townships because they're not cities. So I am selecting now Harrison Township's precincts around it. And so I'm just going to keep going here real quickly as an example, again, of getting to that number close to even. So great township here. Okay. So I'm just about there at negative 203, just short on the population. But what I want to look at here is the district details. That district, when I started with it, you might remember the whole county was 53.8% Democratic. It's now 55.1% for the portion of the county that remains. And so that just moved the remainder of the county about 2 percentage points, a 1.5 higher Democratic and a 1.5 lower Republican. Those 3 percentage points could be very significant in an election. Well, let's see what happens if I do the reverse and pick out of Springdale here, which is a more Democratic area. Again, I'll just pick precincts, get my population back, and do this very quickly. And again, you can toggle to bring up the precinct boundaries here, but I'm just doing this quick and fast to give you an idea of how this can. Okay. All right, close enough for now, 678. So I had this congressional district all the way up to 55% Democratic. I now have it down all the way to 53% Democratic. So again, the decisions you make can make a big difference. So instead of this being a more than 10% margin of victory for a Democrat, now this is a 7%, which makes it a much more challenging race for a Democratic, and it gives a better opportunity for Republicans. So when you draw the whole state here, you're going to start with those 3 major counties for Congress: Hamilton, Franklin, and Cuyahoga. And then the next step you'll have is that you'll have to put the remainder of those counties in one single district. My strong advice to you would be to, as you're drawing, take that remainder of the county, say the remainder of Cuyahoga, and just leave it there, so to speak, before you try to complete that district, because those districts can change population a little bit easier than a district where you only can use whole county borders. You can make a little bit of different population changes in Cuyahoga County with your remnant district, and say, instead of having, I don't know, a Beechwood with a district, you could pick a Gates Mills and trade off a few thousand people here or there. As of the 2019 census estimates, the county surrounding Cuyahoga that actually matches best with the remnant of the remaining 470,000 people is in fact Lorain County, which is very interesting, because if that county ends up being with the remnant of Cuyahoga County, that will be an almost perfectly 50-50 district right on the nose. So you can see where I selected here, Lorain County is 469,000 short, and the Cuyahoga is 470,000 over. So that could be a very interesting situation to see if the districts inside of Cuyahoga County and the district outside of the city of Cleveland, but still in the county, is paired with Lorain. So I think that's a good summary. As you draw with the rest of the state, it is much easier to use large counties first and work your way to smaller counties. And so what do I mean by that? So I could just draw, we'll create another district here, a near perfect with these rural counties district. There we go. I just did that very fast, and I'm only off by 1,800 people. I could do that very easily, because so many of the counties in Ohio are between 20,000 and 50,000 in population. What's challenging is moving a county, say like Medina, which has 800,000 people, or Summit, which has 500,000 people. That if your goal is to not break up those counties, it is easier to make different choices about which counties you include with them when you're in smaller surrounding counties than it is to try to make, especially this corner in the Northeast here, where you've got multiple counties over 100,000 people of Trumbull, Mahoning, and Portage, and Stark, Summit, and Medina, all in one big glump all together here. So let me pause for a moment. We've got about 10 minutes left. And are there any other questions or a different level of mapping or a different technique that folks would like to see me demonstrate? I know this was a very quick run through.
Can I just ask for people that are not super familiar with like what is needed? So our goal, the goal when you're putting these together is population, but it's also trying to get 50-50 in terms of voting. Any kind of also in terms of like racial breakup, are we trying to look at that? Or, you know, what besides population, what else are we looking at?
So there's a little bit of a different answer on each level. Okay. For Congress, with the state reforms, we are looking for very few community splits, very few counties, very few cities. I will tell you right now, it is possible to draw maps that represent Ohio with only the remnants in Cuyahoga, Franklin, and Hamilton, and one other county split in the entire rest of the state. I mean, it takes a lot of effort, but it's doable. Right. For Congress, your target really is going to be, you want to have a population variance of no more than 1%, which is 0.5% up and 0.5% down. 10 years ago, the Ohio plan drew the map to what it believed to be the very last person, so that every single district had exactly the same population, plus or minus one person. That is not the standard that is out there from the US Supreme Court. There was a decision in 2012 in West Virginia, which set the new standard, which doesn't explicitly say the 1%, but says you can have a very small amount of variance if there's a compelling reason, for example, preserving a city, preserving a county, then you can have a little bit of variance. For everything except for Congress, it's that plus or minus 5% population. And then you want to look at, again, are you using whole communities? And are those communities, do they make sense? In terms of minority districts, people have seen the Voting Rights Act, and there's been a very simplified kind of analysis put out of, if you can draw a 50% voting age population African-American district, you must, or that all districts must be 50%. The nuance for the courts, or the evaluation of maps for the courts, is much more nuanced. What they say, it's kind of the reverse. If you want to say that a minority district wasn't created, you have to prove that a 50% was possible, but then you have to go 2 steps further and prove that the minority population votes as a group, and that the majority, in this case white population, votes against that minority. Euclid, that I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, had that demonstrated to some degree in their city 10 years ago. In general, in Ohio, that is not a clear-cut standard in terms of you need 50%. For example, there's a seat in Akron, Summit County, where the House Minority Leader is the representative for, and her father, the state senator for, that has never been above 25% minority, but has been held by an African-American for over 30 years. The number, there's not a magic number that's been agreed to academically as to what defines a minority district. But generally speaking, you'll want to be at least, in terms of that voting age population, at least at the, I would say 30 to 35% is when you start seeing a threshold of that this is likely a minority preferred candidate that's going to be elected to that seat. It depends a little bit on in terms of white voters, are they Democrats or are they Republicans? White Democrats tend to be a little more likely to vote for minorities than white Republicans are.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? I think Michael had a question previously. I'm not sure if you just answered it or not, though.
So in terms of for Congress, we've had in Greater Cleveland a longstanding district that was first represented by Congressman Stokes, and now all the way will be represented to Chantel Brown, and has been African-American for that entire duration. There's a couple things about that district. That district right now goes from Cuyahoga County and then is gerrymandered all the way down to Akron. So to Michael's question, can that continue? The short answer is no. The longer, more complex answer is the reason the answer is no is because, again, there's no demonstrated possibility of a couple of things. One is it is no longer, because you need that 780,000 people and not 710. The amount of people went up. Well, there aren't more African Americans, and so the people that get added to that district now will be predominantly Caucasian, and so it would no longer be possible to draw a 50% voting age population African American seat anywhere, no matter how much you gerrymander in the state of Ohio. So that's the first threshold. The second is 10 years ago, when the current maps were drawn, there was no effort made to demonstrate that there was racially polarized voting to suggest that such a district should exist. If there were analysis done now, again, it would not likely indicate that 50% is the threshold that would be absolutely necessary for African Americans to elect a candidate of choice. So no, there won't be any kind of voting rights requirement for a district to look like that. With that said, for the congressional process, there are, as I said, different rules than for the General Assembly. For the General Assembly, it's pretty cut and dry. You have to use whole communities inside of counties. For Congress, is something that good government groups are going to want to pay attention to. There are some guardrails about severe gerrymandering. For example, Summit County right now has 4 different congressional districts in it. You're not allowed to have 4. You'll have a maximum of 3 in 5 counties and 2 in 5 more counties. But aside from those kind of very loose guardrails, if both parties work together, it is possible for most of the community preservation rules to be disregarded. So what you could see happen is what's called a bipartisan gerrymander, where more communities are broken up and each party kind of picks its own side. There's been a lot of skepticism that a deal will emerge like that in Ohio, simply because right now we have a 12 Republican and 4 Democratic member map. The current reform suggests that that should change from 12 Republican seats down to only 8, and that the Democratic seat count should go from 4 all the way up to 7 to reflect the elections of the last 10 years. So I would say it's for Republicans and Democrats to come to an easy agreement when Republicans are losing so many seats may be difficult. Again, so Heather's question, Rocky River is currently 2 congressional districts. Can that be done? Under the strict rules, if the parties don't get along, the answer is no. And the reason that Rocky River can't be divided is because, and if you play with this software long enough, you'll see it isn't necessary to divide Rocky River for population balance. You can just make different choices. You can choose to be in other communities. So no, it is not necessary to divide Rocky River, Bay Village, City of Cleveland, or any of those. There are tons and tons and tons, literally hundreds of thousands of ways you could draw this map without dividing any single city in the state of Ohio. You will have to divide a county or 2 and pick a couple townships or a couple cities out. But dividing cities themselves is not necessary categorically, I can tell you that. In terms of will the 2 sides bipartisan gerrymander to divide more counties than is necessary, that could happen. Again, but it gets to Michael's question about it's more guessing as to the negotiation strategies of the 2 parties.
Thank you so much, Chris. If nobody has other questions, I will put the address of the map making software in the chat for anybody that needs a direct link. It's super helpful, really interesting. Wow, I can't believe how much you know about all this stuff.
It's overwhelming. And again, this was a real quick and dirty presentation, but it's possible. And again, whether watch the news for your community, whether it's your county, your city, your congressional district, or anything in between, you now have the tools that if a elected official tells you, I must divide Rocky River, I must do this or that, you can see for yourself now, is that true or not? So
right.
Good luck everyone, and enjoy.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks everybody for coming out.